Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to, I guess, Prestige Liquids. This is not your typical whiskey review this time around. This time I do have something a little bit more special for you. And in today's episode, I will be introducing you and running an interview with Craig Crafty Fields from Craftworks Distillery. You would have noticed that a lot of my last 3 reviews that I've done recently, and a couple of others I've done in the past, have featured Craftworks Distillery independent bottlings. And I've finally been able to, well, not just myself, but Crafty as well, we've been able to finally tee up this meeting. And we're just going to sit back, have a chat about his whiskies, his distillery, and all that kind of thing. And yeah, and just have a general old chinwag and a good old time. So without further ado, I'll bring him in now. And if I can find the mouse cursor, there we go. Crafty, how are you, mate?
Andrew, how are you, mate?
Good. It's like I said, it's finally great to finally have you on with me, and for us to actually finally be able to have a a conversation. And yeah,
it's a pleasure, mate.
For me, anyway, this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful morning in Capity. Just come off the back of brewing and distilling, so it's all quiet and calm. So yeah, it's a good time to do it now.
I remember, I think, was it yesterday or the day before, I was watching one of your posts that you had put up on Facebook, and you had the still running in the background, and say that thing makes some damn noise, doesn't it?
Actually, it's funny enough, it's not the still that's making the noise. It's a water pump. So when I put the distillery together, there was a lot of learnings that went along the way. And one of them was, you don't put your pumps for your recirculation of your cooling water inside the shed. You actually put it outside the shed. So that's on my list of things to do, and it's going to make it a lot quieter as well.
Okay. So those are, I guess you're always going to have those little bits and pieces that you always have to get around to doing, aren't there? Like, I guess you always have that initial setup, and then you realize it's like, oh no, I should have done it this way, or could have done that way, and then I guess everything works out in the end.
Look, to be honest, the way this shed's been built, it's I don't know if it's an Australian term or not, but built on the smell of an oily rag. And basically what that means is I put this together with bits and bobs and built it up over time. So, you know, if I was building a brand new distillery and I had a bucket load of cash, I'd do things differently. So it's an evolving thing. But I'll give you a good example. I've got a mill trolley which has just been made by a local guy, and he's just made this thing, and it's fantastic. And for me, it's going to make life so much easier. So whereas before I would manhandle my mill onto a fork, and then manhandle it onto a set of sawhorses, and then I'd mill into a bucket. Now I'm sort of going to the next level. So it's pretty cool. But anyway, I'm rabbiting on. Carry on your side, mate.
That's all good. Before we get started, I just want to thank you, because one, that came in, and these. I've been trying to get my hands on this bottle for a long time, and my original intention was to finally be able to meet you at the Sydney Craft Spirits Markets, but because of obviously current situation, that didn't end up happening, and I've ended up having to, I guess, order it online from you. But that's all good. Finally got it. So thank you so much for sending that out, and also Black Soul Beast and Batman. Thank you so much for sending these out.
I did send you Black Soul
Beast.
I forgot I sent you the Black Soul Beast. I was about to send you another one.
I received them yesterday. I was going to tell you, but I thought, not stuff it. I'll wait and thank you directly in person, or at least what we can do through a screen anyway. But thanks for sending me those.
No, you're welcome, mate. And hey, when you saw that, man, when you pour that, man, the trick is at 65.8%. That is
Yeah,
it's a beast. It's an
it is.
absolute beast. The recommendation is pour it. Yeah, that'll knock you back. It knocked me back.
Yeah,
You pour it into a good sized glass, then go mow the lawns and forget about
yep.
it for a few hours. Let the volatiles burn off before you get into that one.
But how would it go if I actually poured it into the lawnmower? Would that work,
Yeah,
or
it probably work.
it'd be like a nitrous-fueled lawnmower?
It smelled bloody good too.
Oh yeah. Mate, well, just like having a whiff of it from that little sample bottle. I mean, it does have a nice sweet nose to it as well. So I do look forward to giving it a go. But yeah.
Good.
Now, I'll say first off, let me just ask you, mate. What, since you are in, say, to making whiskey and doing like your independent bottlings, what is it that you enjoy most about whiskey?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, number one, I enjoy whiskey. I just enjoy the experience of drinking whiskey with friends, and even people you don't know, and just
Yeah.
having a good conversation. So I enjoy the whole camaraderie around whiskey, a drink, and it's a very emotional drink to me as well for various reasons. As far as the practical whiskey making, up until fairly recently, I've been doing a single cask release, part of the independent bottling, which is
Yep.
really, really, really good, and I'm in progress. But of recent, we're starting to play around with taking product out of one barrel and mixing it with product from another barrel, and creating different flavors. And
Yep.
that is sort of another level. That's a real artistic, not to say that single cask is not artistic, because I think it is.
Yep.
But it's sort of another level. You've got more of a palette to play with. And to me, whiskey making is akin to painting. It's
Yes.
you're dealing with, it's like a palette, is your casks, it's your new make spirit, it's your terroir, it's how each barrel individually performs and how you pull it all together. But when
Yep.
you start blending, I don't like the term blending, vatting different types of barrels together, you got much more of a palette to play with. And
Yep.
so far we've done it with the KPT 1, the KPT 2, or release number 1 and 2. And
Which is that one
Vatman is
there,
a
the
little
KPT
experiment
release
as
number
well.
2.
Yep, that's it. It is in a bigger bottle, mind you. That's a sample bottle.
Well, since we've brought this up now, I'm going to start off with a little bit of this. So there we go. Top whiskey, by the way. That was really, really enjoyable when I was reviewing that yesterday. So good stuff there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. Look, I generally am not a fan of sweet things, and the ironic thing is that a lot of your releases so far have been a lot more on the sweeter side. But like I have to say though, these have not been overly sweet at all. These have been really well balanced and very enjoyable. And I'm a much more of a savory person, so for me to enjoy something that is typically sweet, that's a pretty big thing for me at least. So yeah, I've been really enjoying these.
Good, excellent.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right.
Well, the KPT is a bit of a. We're trying to do two things with the KPT. One, we're trying to make a very easy, accessible whiskey, and the KPT is actually my cellar door release from where we are in KPT, and it's cellar door, and the idea is people come in and they see the shed and they want to taste something, and they may not be big whiskey drinkers, so the KPT is really designed for them. It's an easy, approachable whiskey, but at the same time, I'm trying to I should stop saying we, because there are others involved, friends,
Yep.
good friends that helped me with this, aka the Todd.
Yep.
And my reality check manager and Mrs. Crafty.
Yep.
So anyway, the idea is to build some complexity into it as well. So for a seasoned whiskey drinker, you've got something there which is like, okay, I get it. It's easy. It's smashable as far as a craft whiskey. But hey, there's something else going on there too, and let's sit down and explore it. So that was the brief for the KPD, and I think we did well on that one.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, like you said, perfect for beginners, but yet there is still something there for, like you said, the seasoned drinker. I've found as well, especially like with a lot of, I guess a lot of scotches, especially ones that have typically been released at say 40%. Yeah, they're very easy going, but yet they are marketed at a more of a beginner's level rather than somebody who is like a veteran drinker and somebody that loves to have that experience when they're drinking. And that's not to say that it's a bad whiskey, but if you're wanting a little bit more complexity, well, you're just not going to get it from that style of whiskey. But you've managed to get both ends of that spectrum with the KPD.
Yeah, good. I guess another term would be, if you take a craft beer term, a sessionable whiskey. Sessionable beer. It's a sessionable whiskey.
Yeah. But what was it that got you into whiskey production?
That's a long story. I'll give you the short version. It started with a good friend of mine, a man called Derek Taylor. And Derek this was in the early 2000s, and Derek was a whiskey passionate person beyond belief. And as passionate as he was on whiskey, I was anti-whiskey. I hated whiskey with a passion, right?
Wow.
And every time we go out, he'd say, mate, I'll buy you whiskey. And I'd go, I don't want it. Just give me something else. And then unfortunately, Derek passed away. And when he passed away young. He passed away in his 50s. And when he passed away, his family gave me his bottles that he had at home. Now, remember, this is early 2000. Early 2000. And actually a little bit earlier than that. And so I got these bottles and I took them home. And one night I lined them all up and started to drink them. And it was that particular moment in time that it sort of I went, whoa, this is like wine. They're all different. And it put me on a quest to sort of understand more about it. That was the first part. So that was sort of the spark for my whiskey interest. The second part of the equation was Bruichladdich, a great Scottish distillery. And Bruichladdich, I attended a masterclass in Sydney, and I was just in awe of the person in front of me and his passion, his expressiveness, and just the variety of taste within one distillery. So I became an absolute avid fan of Bruichladdich. From there, my interest just developed, and I started to want to know more and more and more. And I started to read. I did a few courses. I started to meet a few distillers. And I got to a point where I thought, hey, I'd love to make whiskey. I can't make whiskey. I don't have a distillery, but what can I do? And so I convinced my wife, Andrea, that can I just go buy some New Make Spirit, can put it into a barrel and make one cask of whiskey? And she agreed. And so then I was like, oh crap, now I've got to go off and learn about wood and maturation and everything else. And so it sort of went from there. It was one barrel, then it was 2 barrels, then it was 3 barrels. A distiller mate of mine, a guy called Brian Hollingworth at Blackgate Distillery, helped me out and looked after my barrels for me. At 1, it was cool. At 2, it was cool. At 10, it was like, mate, you got to get these out and do something. So then I got to a point where I thought I'll get a little shed. And then I got a little bit further and thought, hey, I'm going to buy a little still, which got turned into a bigger still. and a very good friend of mine now, Mark Burnsy, built my still. And yeah, it just went from there. And then I surrounded myself with people who I call my mentors, and learned a lot off them, and just passion and energy just kept going. And here I am now, sitting in the shed talking to you. That's the short version, by the way. Oh, hang on. Let me just add one more thing. So the very first release of Craftworks Distillery Independent Bottling was a release called Just Derek.
Yep.
And it was a tribute very much to Derek Taylor, my dear friend who passed away, because if he was alive, this would not be the Craftworks Distillery. This would be the probably Taylor Distillery, and I'd be working on the side. You know, he would very much be part of what it is. So that's why whiskey is emotional to me. Well,
and I suppose, I guess on the other spectrum, as unfortunate as the passing of your best friend is, say none of this may not have even happened. You know, he himself literally has set you along the path that you have now chosen to do. So
100%. 100%.
So I think in a lot of ways, I guess we should be thanking him for, I guess, the gift that he has given you, and now the gift that you have given us. So before we go any further, if I may, to Derek, and thank you for everything. And say thank you for everything that you've brought forward for all of us now. So cheers.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
I guess we always need the support of our family and friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So this has all been obviously what has gotten you into whole whiskey production, but why independent bottling? What was it that brought you into exploring independent bottling?
Independent bottling is a good way to learn the craft. It's a good way to build up your network.
Yep.
And explore passion. Independent bottling now, we've used 5 different new make spirits, including what we've actually distilled here in Capity. So Craftworks Distillery new make spirit, and it's an exploration. So a lot of the early casks, and there's still early casks in Craftworks, are quite experimental in the sense of haven't just gone into straight bourbon and just done bourbon casks. Now, bourbon casks are 99% of all casks produced in, say Scotland, and it's changing. But, you know, we've gone straight off the bat, we've gone into sherry casks, Tokay casks, Shiraz casks, rum casks, cider casks. What else? Botrytis. Botrytis was an absolute winner. Pinot Noir casks. Pinot Noir. Yeah, the rage. Now, when I say going into those casks, most of those have been reworked into whiskey casks. So they're casks which have been bought. So, for example, a 240-litre barrique cask, French oak, that's been reworked, recoopered down to 100-litre and charred. I'm a big believer in char and the more traditional approach to whiskey. I really do believe a charred whiskey cask will give you more than, say, a straight wine cask. I see it in some casks I've got on the shelf now, which are maturing not the same way as they would if they were charred casks.
Yep. Now, I say that's one thing that I have been enjoying about all these releases is the fact that one, you're getting so much complexity from the spirit and obviously the type of barrel that you've selected, but also that you do notice that barrel char and all those extra barrel notes that are going into the whiskeys, and that has been one of the aspects that have really been, I guess, I have been really enjoying about these releases so far. I do enjoy oaky whiskies, And I know it may not be for everybody's palate. There are a lot of people that tend to complain about it, and they we don't really like the whole wood flavor. But for me, that's right up my alley. So as I'm always going to be a keen advocate for those types of notes. So yeah, great job on those.
Yeah, it's a challenge with barrel char. You know, and oaking and over oaking.
Yeah.
It's a really fine balance. Yeah, and once you go too far, then you think, yeah, okay, well, what happens then? You know, Black Soul Beast, which you got a sample of,
Yep.
that one is right on the line as far as going too far over oak, just a tad.
Yep.
But yeah, it was is one of the best releases we've had as far as accolades and just people enjoying it.
Yep.
And I know why. It's just right on the line. It's something about it. But yeah, if you went too far, that's why I call it Black Soul Beast. It was a beast. It was a monster to tame going through summer. And in Australia, we don't talk about years with our whiskey. We talk about summers. It's all about the summers and what the impact is.
Yeah.
And so the beast was a beast. And yeah, right on the line.
Yeah, from what I've been noticing now as well, especially I think since Texan whiskies and other US bourbons, I guess a lot of those are being produced in climates that are very similar to ours. So, I mean, I guess it's one of those things where you really need to be on the ball and make sure that you know that what's going on with your casks at all time. Because I know from like videos that I've been watching of other like bourbon distillers and whatnot, and I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. They're waiting and waiting and waiting, and they think, okay, look, it can go a little bit more, and then they let it go that little bit more, and then unfortunately they've lost it, and
Yeah.
it's become over oaked, or the flavor that they were after has changed completely. And I think one thing that you had also mentioned, I think, was about with Rage as well. I think you intended to let this go another year, but you ended up pulling it out earlier as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Rage, from an age statement, is quite young. From a number of summers, it's quite young, but it was balanced. It was really balanced. And when you have a winemaker come in and taste a whiskey and go, wow, we can actually taste Pinot.
Yeah.
I thought, well, if it goes another summer, it'll extract too much more out of the wood, and it'll lose that balance. So that's why we pulled Pinot when we did, the Rage
Yep.
when we did. And yeah, very, very happy. The reviews on it were very promising, very good. And yeah, people commented on the balance. So, and the other one you tasted, Tokyo-Oke.
Yep. That's I was
Same
going to mention
spirit
that.
in a different, that one, same spirit,
Yep.
but in a different barrel, Tokyo barrel. That one went further than the Pinot.
Yeah.
It needed to go that little bit further. So it's all about, yeah, tasting, reviewing, checking the conditions of the barrels, because the barrels change, particularly over summer. They sweat, they leak,
Yep.
they weep. They don't leak, they weep. A leak's bad, a weep is good. So yeah, you're
Yeah,
just
you got to have
constantly
that
reviewing, and
that eagle share.
it's easy when you're a small distillery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess the independent bottlings aside, what is it that makes Craftworks Distillery stand out, in your opinion? What is it that makes Craftworks Distillery stand out from, I guess, other Australian distilleries?
Well, I don't know if standout would be the word, but I'd say the things that Craftworks does is, one, we're quite exploratory in our approach. When we started distilling, we didn't play it safe. You know, we didn't start with just what you call base malt, 100% base malt, and go straight into bourbon barrels. We actually, straight off the bat, I wanted to build a recipe, a mash bill based on a stout recipe. So
Okay.
using a lot of different malts, craft malts, brewers malts, because I believe that you build complexity into a new make spirit, the way that we make whiskey in Australia with our climate and everything else, you can build young, complex whiskies. And we've only just hit the 2-year mark, February this year. So technically, we've got distilled Capity, Craftworks Distillery single malt whiskey. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's proven. And this is not my opinion. This is other people's opinions. I had a group from the Blue Mountains Whisky Club here, 30 of them, 25 of them, a while ago, and they got to taste some of the stuff, and they were blown away of the complexity of the spirit. And so Craftworks is really focused on building young, complex whiskies. I'm one of the very, very few distilleries that actually independent bottle as well. So get to do two things. You get to play with other distilleries, which are all good friends of mine, and use their spirit and express their spirits different ways, which is that's really exciting. And the other thing is, I'd say we are very transparent. There's other distilleries transparent, but we're very transparent. We like to tell the journey, because it is a journey, the good, the bad, the ugly, and built a following through doing that. And the last thing I'd say, and I don't think there'd be a distiller in Australia that would argue at this point, we're probably the most prolific distillery on social media. We do post a lot, we do tell a lot, to the point that others go, mate, tone it down a bit, just tone it down a bit.
Mate, they're just getting jealous. It's okay.
No, I mean, I have a lot of distiller friends, and there's some great stuff happening in Australia. There really is, and it's just a joy to be part of this industry.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say, with the independent bottlings now, you have stated that you have used peated whiskey from Riverbourne Distillery, and that you used for Grumpy Old Man on the Hill. Is that is this spirit the same spirit that they've used in their peated release, or is it a different spirit?
That's a really good question. So it is the same spirit. Marty Pye, aka the Grumpy Old Man on the Hill, a very good friend of mine, distilled it. I put it in. So I got the new make spirit, brought it back to Capity, and put it into a 100-litre recoopered bourbon barrel. Marty's got some releases bourbon barrels around the same time. So in theory, they should be very similar to Grumpy Old Man, except for the barrels have matured in different climates. So I'm about 700, 800 meters above sea level. Marty's higher. He's over 1,000. His climate is totally different. So I reckon, and I'm looking forward to doing this, is getting a bottle when Marty releases his bourbon cask around the same batch of new make spirit and compare it. I think they'll be similar, but there'll be differences. Because of the terroir of each area. Yeah,
definitely. And that's one thing that I was going to say, because you had mentioned just before, that the one thing that you're finding interesting is taking a spirit from another distillery and seeing how it turns out after you're maturing it. And that's one thing that I did notice, because around the same time that you sent me the 3 samples, Marty had also sent me a sample set as well, which had his peated whiskey in that. And I did do like a comparison of them, let's say privately, of them side by side. And it's funny, when you compare them, they are similar, but yet so different at the same time. That was very interesting to find out.
If I was you, I'd have a chat to Marty and see the one that you've got. Was it in a bourbon cask or not? I'm not too sure, because he's done it in various styles. He does it in heavily shaved Californian wine casks. He does it
Yep.
in bourbon casks. He does it in rum casks. He does it in all sorts. So yeah, I'd get on the blower and have a chat to Marty and find out which one was the bourbon one. And yeah, it's a good comparison. Just on comparisons, I've got a nice little project in the shed. So I got 4 50-litre casks made. They're Andrew Young casks, which are a pretty special casks. 2 of them were filled with Manly Spirits new make, and 2 of them were filled with Craftworks Distillery new make. And those 4 barrels have 100% matured in Capity. They're just coming up to the 2-year mark now. That is going to be a direct comparison of new make spirits in barrels made at the same time, but matured in one location. And I have tasted them, and they are very, very different whiskies. And it's really, really exciting.
It's amazing how these differences can come about. Like you, I guess, generally using the same spirit, like you would expect that that they would almost be the same, but then, like you said, your location itself makes a big difference. The types of different casks that you're choosing to finish them off in as well. There's just so many aspects that that can just change the outcome altogether, and it is absolutely fantastic to be able to, I guess, experience that and see how they can change. I mean, as like we know, say Rage and the K obviously came from the same spirit, but aged in different casks, and they are completely different products. And yeah, let's say it's still, like, even for myself, it still amazes me at how different they can be.
I think that's something which I learnt from tasting Bruichladdich whiskey. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Bruichladdich. Bruichladdich, they released in so many different cask formats. And so within one single distillery, you could go to a bottle shop and you could buy various Bruichladdich, and they're all vastly different. So you didn't need to buy from different distilleries. You could just buy from a single distillery, which was really got me intrigued on cask wood and the different influences that different casks can have. So yeah, definitely I credit some of that to Bruichladdich and just learning, just drinking their product and researching Bruichladdich and meeting some key Bruichladdich people too. The legendary Jim McEwen from Bruichladdich is someone who is, I just admire what he's done and what he's done for the industry globally as well. Just getting the word out there on whiskey.
I guess keeping along the whole Isla things, that's one thing that, again, I really enjoyed about was it your Lager Cat release, was the fact that you had an ex-Lagavulin cask for that. And I don't know if it's one of those things where, call it, I guess, the whole like power of persuasion and all that kind of thing, but that particular cask, I think you were telling me, had flies.
Tell me about it.
I think you were telling me with that barrel, obviously it's come from Lagavulin, but then it went to a South Australian winery that then held, say, a good old Australian wine. It came to you, and after all that process and, I guess, change that it's been through, you could still pick those Lagavulin notes in that barrel.
It's Lager Cat. So yes, ex-Lagavulin cask. Now the story behind Lager Cat was there was a cooperage, still a cooperage down in Tasmania called Tassie Cask Company. And Tassie Cask Company, guy called Adam Boney. I used to ring up on a regular basis, go, mate, have you got anything different from a wood perspective? And it'd be like, no, mate, I've got nothing. It's just bourbon, sherry, port, the usuals, and wine. And then one day I rang him up and he said, bugger me, you're not going to believe this, but I've got a ex-Lagavulin cask that a winemaker has used, and he's made, it's either a Tokay or what was the other one? It was a Tokay or something else. And so this was still a wine cask at this stage. And I said, yes, please, I'll take it. So I took it. He sent me up a sample in a 2-litre Coke bottle of the juice that was still in there. So I got someone to taste it who knew about wines and said, "Oh, that's Tokay." So we got it recouped. Then got it recouped down to 100-litre heavy char cask. Got that filled, and bang bang, we made Lagercat. But the story doesn't end there. So I've finished with Lagercat cask. So that's originally a Lagavulin cask. It would have been, we estimate 50 years use at Lagavulin, because first fill, second fill, third fill.
Yep.
It's now continued its journey. It's gone to a mate of mine who's a brewer, gypsy brewer, called Hop and Clover Brewing Co. And he's made a choc cherry stout in that cask.
Okay.
Now, I'm getting that cask back and I'm refilling it. So if you think about layers, you go Lagavulin layer.
Yeah.
Then you go, we got the Tokay layer. Then we've got the whiskey layer. Then we've got this choc cherry stout layer. And I'm about to go back in, and that's going to be another whiskey layer. So I think the word complexity comes into mind.
You've got me drooling just thinking about what will come from that now. It's like, talk dirty to me.
The whiskey porn.
I think you're gonna have a. I can tell you now. There's even say a lot of people from, I guess, the international, say whiskey tubers and all that kind of thing. When they hear that, they're just gonna go poof. And yeah, that's gonna bring some excitement to a lot of people. But
yes.
especially keeping along with the whole indie bottling, are there distilleries at the moment that you haven't worked with yet that you look forward to working with in the future? That you're at least allowed to tell us about anyway.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So I have Manly Spirits, which is on the shelf.
Yep.
I have Flurio Distillery, which is a South Australian distillery that won Best Craft International Whiskey last year, I think it was. And I've got Tin Shed, which is another South Australian distillery, making amazing whiskies. So I've got those on the shelf, and that's it for independent bottling at this stage. I've put independent bottling on hold because I need to focus on what we're doing in the shed. We've only been distilling in the shed for two and a bit years. Still ironing out bugs on brewing, really focusing on that side. And but the independent bottling side in the future, I've definitely been doing some more independent bottling projects down the track. And the great thing about it is, I do have a good reputation now for independent bottlings, and I do have a lot of friends in the industry, distillers, so I can pick up a phone and talk to someone and say, "Mate, would you like to do an IB project with me?" And I've got some good options.
Yeah, that's good, and I think that's definitely well deserved.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I guess always with the whole elephant in the room, as I guess we'd call it now, this whole COVID-19 and all that kind of thing. At the moment, how has that been affecting you and the distillery? Has it been something that has had a massive impact on what you're able to do at the moment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at it from a sales revenue standpoint, a sales stream, my main source of sales was through cellar door, bars, restaurants, and markets. So there is no cellar door, there is no bars, there is no restaurants, and there is no markets. And also online. So my attention is turned very much to online sales, and recently just released 3 releases. It was only going to be 2, but the KPD can't have a cellar door, so did that online. But also I've adapted really quickly. Those little mini bottles you've got, those 50 ml bottles, I am actually bottling some product in 50 ml bottlings. And the idea behind that is to get them into places that like independent bottle shops, and also some breweries and that. And it's sort of it's a small introduction to craft whiskey, and it's an easy purchase. So that's sort of going between $20, $25 for 50 mils of an Australian craft whiskey. And I'm really pushing that angle, support local. I'm getting a lot of support on it as well, from my traditional followers, but also new people. COVID's been hard. It's been hard for a lot of my friends, distiller friends in the industry. They're having to reinvent themselves. Some are doing sanitizer, which is massively in demand right now, and there's been an absolute shortage, and Australian distillers have really stepped up.
Yeah, they
and
have.
just
There's been
churning
so
out
many.
sanitizer. Oh, absolutely, and a lot of them are doing it for the right reason. It's product which is desperately needed, and at the same time, it's pulling in a few bucks to keep the doors open for some people.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing I guess that will really start to affect people is their ability to be able to adapt, because unfortunately you have to. If you don't, you'll fall behind, and unfortunately you'll just be another story. But to be able to come up with different ways that can keep you going, and like you said, say being able to say just even putting out the 50 ml bottles for stores to sell, it is just a great idea, and it allows you to sell product as well. I mean, I know, even say from my own perspective, I mean, the one thing that I have been really enjoying Australian whiskies lately. But I'm sure, as you're aware, they're not cheap. And at least having say something like this that would come down to a much more affordable price, especially for those who are just wanting to try it, they now have that option, and they'll be more likely to spend on, say, like a full-size bottle once they know what they're getting into. So that is definitely a fantastic idea for doing that. So
Yeah, there's distillers that are releasing in smaller format. 500 mils is your fairly typical format, but there are distillers releasing in 200 liters, 100 liters, 50 liters now. So yeah, you can buy smaller amounts. And just the comments on cost, absolutely. You're paying a premium for Australian craft whiskey, and some of it is just purely it's costs. It's cost of material. We're not buying tanker loads of materials, truckloads of material. We're buying small. Here at Craftworks, we buy craft, which is the brewers' malts, the malts that are used to make craft beer, and we buy local. I buy from a company called Voyager Craft Malts. Fantastic guys, fantastic locals, and it's fascinating because I had an American in the shed one day, and he tasted a whiskey, and he looked at the price, and he said to me, "Mate," he said, "don't compare yourself to Wild Turkey. Compare yourself to those special one-off releases from Wild Turkey, and look at the price that Americans will pay for that." And he's right. We release not just Craftworks, but craft distilleries in general. They release small product lines. They are very specialized lines. They're not mass-produced products. So I never get into a defensive position on pricing because there's no need to. It's we make what we make. We do what we do. If a person wants to buy it, fantastic. If they don't, that's fine. It's that's the way the world is. It's all good.
Yeah. But I guess going along with the whole, disaster thing. I mean, unfortunately, we've been hit. Like the Australian market at the moment has been hit very tragically at the moment. I mean, we've got COVID, but then before that, man, we've had the worst bushfires that we've ever seen for like who knows how long, and then extreme flooding after that. I mean, that's something that I know for a fact, after seeing like all your posts and things like that affected you. You guys actually came very close to losing the distillery a few times, didn't you? Especially during the period.
Absolutely. We came very, very close. Now, we were lucky. Capity RFS and the RFS around were ready, and they put in some big fire breaks around Capity. But we were surrounded. We had fires on 3-4 fronts. We were totally surrounded. They cut the road at one stage. We lost our mobile tower, so we were completely isolated. And it was horrible. You'd stand outside, you'd look to one side and you'd see smoke. You'd look to the other side, you'd see smoke. And the impact also was on business. I was counting on a very, very strong cellar season. I'm on the back of a pub. The pub was booming. It was a great place to be. And we had absolutely zero cellar door traffic. So it was a tough period. And it was also, you talk to people who are exposed to these sort of fires, it may not happen straight away. It sort of creeps up on you. So you're just constantly living under that. When will it come? When will it come? And you prepare as much as you can. Now, we were lucky. We weren't hit. And it makes you think about the future and what you do to sort of prepare yourself more. And there was other distillers that got smashed, not as far as their distilleries getting burnt, but just business-wise. Good friends of mine at Joadja Distillery in Mittagong, they very reliant on their cellar door traffic, absolutely gone. And they were surrounded by fires. So, yes, but luckily no distilleries burnt down as such. And the community rallied. And in some ways, it built up a bit of resilience. Because when we had the floods, which weren't too bad here, but then we had COVID, we'd built up a bit of resilience. We were sort of prepared for when you served a shit sandwich like we're all being served. Pardon my language.
No, that's fine. I'll say, well, really, we've all got the shit end of the stick with the way things have been going at the moment, but. I guess, look, it's always one thing they always call the good old Aussie spirit, and we always seem to manage to bounce back stronger from these types of things. So I guess we can definitely expect some interesting things to happen in the future. But
absolutely.
Keeping on with the fires, and this was something that I was really thinking about while this was going on, whether it may affect you or the other distilleries. Now, obviously these fires were going for a long time. So we had like 3 months pretty much straight of just constant smoke in the air all the time. Now, is that something that could affect the barrels and the product inside them at all? Like, is there any way that type of environmental influence will affect the end product?
It's something which we've thought about. It's an unknown. It'll be a couple of years before we really know. I mean, my barley is stored in a metal shed, but it's got a lot of vents in it. So yes, it could absolutely pull in smoke. The bags are porous; it could pull in smoke. I do a lot of milling outside. And I was milling in smoke, that's for sure. So could it pick up some smoking notes in the barley? Quite possibly. Could it come through in the whiskey? Quite possibly. It's really an unknown. I'd say probably in the next 12 months we'll get an indication, because we'll taste the whiskey in some of the younger barrels. And if there's a smoky note and it ain't smoky barley, peated barley, then I think we can say logically, it's contributed. Well, so there's another level of terroir, I guess. Yeah,
and I was going to say, and that's especially if you know it's come from that particular crop.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I know you were saying that this should be watered down and probably let to sit, but I'm curious. I'm going to be a hard ass. I'm going to pour it into the Glen can and I'm going to give Batman a try. So I'm just going to I'm going to pour a little bit of this and just see how we go. So wish me luck.
There's no naked flame around, is there?
No, not at the moment. Just the sun. Right. So at the moment, let's say, thinking towards the future, how do you see Craftworks Distillery going, say, within the next 5-year period?
Oh, it's a toughie. What I would say is, so when Craftworks started, it was very much me. It was very much me. It was, I came up with a term, I am a craft worker, therefore I am, which
Yep.
basically means I'm doing what I love. It makes me happy. And so craft worker sort of became a bit of a name for me. And then it got shortened down to Crafty, and people call me Crafty. So now I'm known as Crafty, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
The Craftworks has evolved. I mean, now Todd Pointer, who's a good friend of mine, called the Todd, and I call him the apprentice's apprentice, because I class myself still as an apprentice. I put myself in a self-imposed apprenticeship. I'll come out of my 3-year apprenticeship August this year, I think.
Yep.
And then, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a fully fledged distiller then. But then I've also got Kathy Pointer, who's my reality check manager, because she definitely pulls me into line when I come up with some dumb ideas. And then I got Andrea, my partner. She's Mrs. Crafty. So between Todd, Kathy, Andrea, and myself, we do a lot in Craftworks as far as crafting the spirits. So Craftworks has evolved. I think the next level of development for Craftworks will be just expansion in space. I mean, we work in a really tight shed, a 60 square meter shed. Definitely need to expand from there. I think the establishment of Craftworks distilled spirit will be something, and you know, the stout base smash bill and what impact that has on whiskey, that'll be interesting. So we have a Craftworks style. Collaborations with other people, there'll be more of those. I collaborate with winemakers, collaborations with other distilleries. You know, we'll do a New South Wales blended whiskey shortly. That's a secret, don't tell anyone.
Sorry to cut you off, but that's probably one thing that you don't really seem to hear of too much, I guess, in the Australian whiskey industry. A lot of distilleries are pretty much producing their own single malt, but have there been others that are there actual blenders?
There's not a lot of blenders around. No, there's not. There's distilleries that work, they collaborate. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now. No, there's distilleries that collaborate with other people. So they collaborate with breweries, they collaborate with bars and things like that. But actual direct collaborations with one distillery to the next and saying, hey, let's blend our spirits and let's do something really special. No, you don't really see that yet. It's definitely coming. It's sort of, if you think of the community and how we operate, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. I mean, I'm talking to a few distiller mates and going, look, my spirit has a certain profile. Yours has a certain profile. Why don't we put it together in a barrel? And we did actually do that. Actually, I should mention, we did that. A group of us when was it, 2019? We did a New South Wales distillers collaboration. And we put together a 20-litre charity barrel. And it was a number of distilleries. It was Blackgate Distillery. It was Craftworks Distillery. It was Otto Distillery. It was Mobius Distillery. Who else? I'm trying to think of the other names. Can't think off the top of my head. Manly Spirits, because the event was at Manly. Who else? I can't remember. But anyway, so it has been done. Yeah, it has been done, and there'll be other projects in the future for sure.
Yeah. There's definitely some interesting times to look forward to. That's for sure. Like, this is a bomb.
I told you.
Mate, it's incredible. It is.
There's a lot going on.
It's it's so hard to describe. I mean, initially you've got such a, I don't know, I would call it like heavily burnt caramel at first,
Yes.
especially like on the nose.
Yeah.
But just having it like sit in your mouth, it changes so much. I mean, yeah, I look forward to playing around with that. That's going to be really, really good stuff.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that. So that is Craftworks Distillery whiskey. Okay, so that's
Okay.
been distilled in Caperty, 100%, and
Yep.
that's been vatted with Adams Distillery, which is a Tasmanian distillery.
Okay.
So I was a founding member of Adams Distillery, and I laid a 20-litre cask with them, bourbon cask.
Yep.
I got that bourbon cask, so 20-litre bourbon cask. After 3 years, it had 10 litres in it. And I thought, what can I do with 10 litres of whiskey? And the Adams boys said, mate, if you want to release it as your own, as an independent bottling, as a no-name, whatever, we'll back you, whatever. So
Yep.
I thought, well, hang on a sec. And then I looked at just cask, which is Craftworks Distillery 2. And this was something that was distilled at Riverbourne. So I distilled it as my mash bill, and I distilled it at Riverbourne Distillery. Marty turned over his still and said, go nuts. And it was before I had my still installed. So what you're tasting there is a taste of Craftworks and what's coming in Craftworks distilled spirit and Adams. And the interesting thing is when you taste the Adams on its own and you taste the Craftworks on its own, and then you taste Vatman, they all taste different. So yeah, I love Vatman. Vatman's fun.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's definitely one that I just wanted
That's one to
to
pour and explore.
Yeah.
That one.
I will definitely try that again later on with a touch of water to it and see how it goes, because I can just imagine it opening up so well. But
Try it in a tumbler. It
I
really
will.
works in a
Yeah,
tumbler.
I will. I look forward to it. But as you are aware, at the moment, I mean, there's some massive things going on in, say, Australian whiskey as well, especially in terms of recognition especially international recognition. I mean, you're a perfect example. I mean, Black Salt Beast. I mean, that won, say, quite a few awards internationally for you. Other distilleries such as Archie Rose, Sullivan's Cove. I mean, they're starting to make big names for themselves in, say, just
Don't
even.
forget Lime Burners.
Oh, and Lime Burners, definitely.
Lime Burners just won Best International in the American Distilled Awards.
Wow.
They won it this year, and they won it 2 years ago. That's a major achievement.
Yes, definitely.
So that's Cameron Syme, Cam, and all the boys at Lime Burners.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, I guess the other part of this question was, I was originally going to go with 10 years, but 10 years is a very big window. So I'll bring it back down to the 5 again. In terms of Australian whiskey industry in a 5-year period, man, what can you see happening there? Like, sorry, I'm kind of just mumbling a bit now. Do you see things going a bit more international than what they are, or will we still be sticking to like a small domestic audience?
No, things are going to change rapidly. So what you're going to see is you're going to see more stratification of the Australian craft spirits, craft whiskies. Yep. So you're going to have the bigger players like Archie Rose, like Lime Burners, like Starwood, like Lark and others. And they are going to really push, and already are pushing heavily into the international markets and taking the Australian message over and quality spirits. So you're going to see that. So you're going to have the big players. Then you're going to have... you're going to see consolidation happen in Australia. You're going to see buyouts. So what you see with breweries, this is my own opinion, what you see breweries and getting snapped up and consolidated, you are going to see some of that happening in the craft spirit space for sure. But you're going to see the stratification occur. It's occurring now, but you're going to have the big players, the real small end of the spectrum, which is me, and then you're going to have different layers in between. And you're going to have a lot more entries into the space, people that go, hey, I want to have a go, I want to make whiskey. But to do that nowadays, it's expensive to set up. It's challenging. It's definitely challenging. And how the big guys, the internationals, respond is going to be quite fascinating. I do think you're going to see some international buyouts as well.
Well, one thing I guess I've noticed at the moment as well is that Diageo, I mean, they're a massive name, and they have started to show interest in Australian product. I know I believe they have done some work with Starward at the moment. Would you say
Correct.
in your opinion, would that be a good thing? Or is it something that's
Well,
probably better for us to manage ourselves?
If you take Starwood example, so yeah, Diageo invested into Starwood, and it's been great for Starwood because what David Vitale wanted to do was to make a whiskey that was accessible to the general public.
Yes.
And with Diageo becoming involved in the business and what expertise they can bring in their distribution channels, that's happened. You know, Starwood is well and truly established now, and David Vitale moved to the US to really promote Australia. And so that's worked. I think there's room for everybody. I think, there's room for people like me, which are small. I don't want to be big. I want to remain small. The idea was to build a business enough that I could have a reasonable income, support the family, holiday every now and then. I don't really want to have 10 stills and 700,000 square space. And others, there's a lot of people that are doing it for those sort of reasons. They just want the lifestyle. They want to have a comfortable living. They want to be able to express themselves. And then there's others that want to make a bucket load of money. So they need big operations. They need staff and to churn it out. I think there's room for everybody.
So definitely some interesting times ahead. So
Yes.
It's going to be it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And I hope that everything happens for the best. So I guess we just have to wait and see.
I do think one thing that's going to happen because of COVID, there is going to be a real snapback to support local, buy local. It's already happening now, right?
Yeah.
And we definitely need that. We all need that. I mean, you can see in the background, sort of my still.
Yep.
Hang on. Hold on, let's try and do this right.
Which I was going to ask
you.
I was just about to ask you because there have been a lot of people that have, especially the international following, they were wanting to know what type of still are you using?
Well, that is local. That is local. So it's a pot still. It's built by Burns Welding Fabrication in Griffith.
Yep.
And so Burnsy is a fabricator for the wine industry and does other things. He's also a distiller. He has his own distillery, Ashling Distillery. They haven't released anything yet, but he builds stills. He's now the most prolific still. I think he's the most prolific still builder in Australia, and he'll build a still as per your what you want to do. So I sat down with Burnsy and I told him the type of spirit that I wanted to produce, and between us, we put that still together, which is a one-off still. So it's a 970 litre full copper pot, insulated still, 30 kilowatts of power, and it's got a shell and tube. Sorry, try and find it. Yeah, there we go. Shell and tube condenser. It's a dumpy still, but it's got a cone, so you get a bit more reflux going on there. So I'm trying to make a somewhat heavy spirit. I love my still. She's called Sunflower Still Number 1, and absolutely, if I expand and buy a still in the future, which I probably will, this would become my spirit still, and I'd buy a wash still. I'd absolutely buy it from Burnsy, from Burns Welding Fabrication. And I recommend them highly to other people that contact me and say, I'm looking at opening a distillery. What would you recommend from a still perspective?
Well, it's definitely important to have a product that you can trust, and not so much the product, the people manufacturing them as well. You have to have, say, that good team that you know that you can rely on. Should you want to expand or you need work done, that you will be looked after. So obviously that is, I mean, without the still, I mean, you don't have your product, and I guess it is the most important piece of equipment that you can have.
It is, but it's also the support that goes behind it.
Yeah.
You know, Burnsy is a mate of mine now, and I can pick up the phone anytime and have a chat, and I do regularly. But you know, anyone who buys a still, you need to have that support behind it. The same as any piece of equipment. You need to know you can talk to someone when you're having any issues or you want to change something. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Actually, there was a little story that I needed to give you as well. I mentioned this. Well, as far as so this yesterday when I reviewed the Capity, I was coming up towards the end of the review, absolutely enjoying it, and I guess luckily for me, you can't really see it happen in the actual video, but you may notice a slight reaction change in me. I was about to take a sip of this, and a small bug flew into my mouth. I'm going for a sip, and I hear, look. Oh shit! What was that?
I've experienced that. We experienced that in the shed.
And you know, it's just more so one of those things that because I could feel it, and I'm trying to continue on with this review. I'm thinking, please don't gag, please don't gag. But yeah, this review almost did not go out. So good.
Look,
good
I relate to that. I've had a few of that.
Right, I am just going to pour myself a little bit of rage. So far, this has been my absolute favorite of your releases so far that I've tried anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to pour a touch of that. And at this point, I've pretty much asked all, say, the questions that I intended to, but I mentioned to you the other day that I also reached out to some of the other like whiskey channel community, and they've got some questions as well. If you don't mind answering some of those, if you have time.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Now this first lot comes from Stuart. He runs Whiskey Whims. He is a Scottish whiskey tuber. Now, in some parts of his questionings, you've already answered. So you did say that you prefer to, I guess, remain a bit more of a smaller distillery instead of like branching out to become some like massive monster machine. But he was also asking how much of the process do you do yourself in terms of, I guess, your grain selection, your distilling, your cask selection, I guess pretty much everything that goes on. Like, how much of it are you doing yourself?
Okay, so I'm the miller, the brewer, the debt collector, the cleaner. I do everything. I do everything, right? The cask selection. As far as the vatting and deciding what casks are coming out, what's next, then very much I have other people who help me. For example, Todd and Kathy and Andrea, they're very much involved in the process, as well as they're involved in the brewing and the distilling process as well. As far as the tasting profiles, I'll send it out to people and get their opinions because I have my opinion and my palate. Todd has his, Kathy has hers, and so I collectively get a feel for what the whiskey's tasting like. But yeah, it's all, everything's done by hand. Everything is me and mates and family.
Yeah. And he was also, yeah, Stuart was also asking as well, and we did already kind of cover this a little bit. Obviously, you've been doing independent bottling, but you've also been, say, distilling your own product. What is it that you're wanting to focus on more, your own distilling, or will the independent bottling kind of be your main focus?
Well, the independent bottling with the casks that are laid so far, there'll be releases 2020, 2021, 2022. I think that's
Yeah,
pretty well safe to say. Um, for now, as far as laying new casks of independent bottling, I'm not laying any new casks with independent bottling. For me, the focus right now is on getting Craftworks Distillery distilled spirit really bedded down.
yeah,
As far as releasing, later this year, I'm hoping to release the first Craftworks Distillery single malt whiskey distilled in Capity, and just continue to build from that. But
yeah,
I will do independent bottlings down the track for sure, and collaborations with other distilleries as well.
yeah. Oh, very interesting. That's I keep saying it, but I really do just keep looking forward to seeing what else is going to come out, because everything so far has just been top notch. Um, at the moment, I just can't see you doing any wrong. So I can just imagine,
No, it can
say,
happen. Don't worry.
look, it's always going to be one of those things. You're never always going to be able to please everybody. As long as you're able to put the product out that you yourself are happy with, then that's
Yeah.
all that matters at the end of the day. Um, one of the other questions comes from Frederick, the Whiskey Pilgrim. This one's coming all the way from Sweden now.
Cool.
And one of his questions, and I guess one that has been asked by a lot of other people as well. Um, International plans. Will there be any chance of people overseas being able to get your product at all, without me going to visit them and say, here's a bottle?
Yeah, I know. To answer that, I'd answer it a couple of ways. So one, we're very, very, very small production.
Yeah,
A single cask will give you 150 to 230 bottles, depending on ABV, depending on cask. So there's not a lot of product out there.
yep,
But I do have a strong international following, which through the Craftworks Distillery Inner Circle built up over years. And I do have international distiller friends as well, which is pretty awesome. I would love to get some product in overseas if I
yeah,
could. It would be very, very small. There are a lot of hurdles to jump as far as trying to export. And for now, it's definitely not a priority. I
yep,
have taken my stuff overseas. I went to Whisky Live 2 years ago in New York and Washington, and had some Craftworks product on the bench, which was fascinating, getting feedback from Americans on that.
yep,
I had plans to go to the UK this year, to Scotland, funny enough, and to
yeah,
Brooklady and other places. And there's a bar in restaurant in Glasgow, I think it's Glasgow, called the Artisan Bar, run by Derek and Fiona, who are the biggest Brooklady fans in the world and have the biggest collection of Brooklady in the world.
wow,
And I suggested to them we do a tasting session. I'll bring over some Craftworks products and we'll do some tasting sessions. So that was going to happen, but obviously now no way it's going to
yeah.
happen. So 2021, possibly, but at this stage, yeah, it's not on the foreseeable horizon.
Yeah. Right. Frederick, he was also asking, in terms of international distilleries, are there any at all that you could compare your style to at all, or would you say it's two completely different?
I'd say it's very different, very, very different. All distilleries are different and doing their own
Yeah.
things. But I'll tell you one distillery that I watch intently what they're doing, and I love their level of transparency, and I love their ethos, and just the direction they're going, and that's Waterford Distillery in Ireland. They haven't released yet, but they are really of the belief that the barley and the way the barley grows and the type of barley impacts the flavor profile on whiskey, which is very much what I believe in here. So the person who is the powerhouse behind that is a guy called Mark Rainier, and Mark Rainier was the powerhouse behind the modern Brook Laddie, and parted ways a few years ago. There's a distillery in the US called Spirit of the Lick. Alan Bishop, American, of course, a man of much passion and a man of much transparency. So I really admire and follow what Alan does. And there's other distilleries around the world as well. But they're the two that the way that they operate as far as the level of transparency and storytelling, I'm very much in that school of telling the story, having transparency. People want to know. As a whiskey drinker, I want to know. I want to be able to ask questions. So, number one, I'm a whiskey drinker.
Yeah. All right. The last part of Fred's questioning as well. I mean, obviously, in Europe, environmental things are, say, very important. So it's not just in Europe, but here as well. But he was also asking, what steps do you follow to try and remain as like eco-friendly as possible?
I think the biggest thing would be how we handle the waste products, because they're not actually waste products. So the grain, when you finish brewing, you're left with the spent grain. You've broken down the starches, you've extracted all the sugars, and you're left with a high protein grain. That goes to farmers. That goes to local farmers. Today, I had a farmer not far from here. He came down. He picked up the barley. He's taken it back to feed his cattle. To me, that's very, very important. You don't dispose of it as industrial waste. It's not industrial waste. Pot ale. Pot ale is a byproduct, and I'm playing around with different ideas of pot ale. How you can use it. I mean, you can use it. You can mix it with grain. You can turn grain into fertilizer. I'm looking at, and I have experimented using pot ale back into brewing. So substituting some of the hot water for actually pot ale that comes off a distillation run. Sort of sour mash type thing, I suppose. Americans do it, and that's the two main things, I think. I mean, we're using local grains. So if you think of it from a carbon footprint standpoint, we're not importing grains at a local level. We're using local materials. My water is all local. So I think that's probably the easiest way to answer that question.
Yeah, no, very good. Now, I guess jumping across to the other side of the pond again, the next one comes from Antonio from Whiskey Quest. He's another channel based in Chicago, Illinois. Now, he's one that's
cool place.
And he's one that is always, I guess, quite concerned about the level of dangerous animals that we have in Australia. and I guess the fun thing is that he was asking is really how careful do you have to be for things like spiders and snakes and like other killer things inside your warehouse and shed?
Absolutely. So we have a spider in Australia called the redback spider. It's a nasty bugger. If you get bitten by a spider, you get pretty sick. I have a lot of redback spiders in the shed, and they're sometimes they'll come down from the ceiling, which they're not meant to be on the ceiling because they're not meant to like height. And they are big. These guys will pick up a broom and whack you if you get too close. They're scary. They're pretty scary. So always careful when cleaning in tight spots to make sure there's no spiders around. I have had spiders fall into receivers and into beakers of whiskey, and they do put up a fight as they slowly get drunk, but they lose the fight in the end. So you got spiders. We do have snakes. I live in Sydney, which is 3.5 hours away from Capity, where my shed is. But I have a little caravan out the back, and I live out there. And so I've got to be very careful of snakes, making sure they don't get into the caravan. Got to make sure careful of snakes here in the shed as well. So far, I haven't had any problems. A couple of months ago, I opened the side door of the distillery, and there was a whopping big kangaroo standing at the door, and it was dark. He saw me, I saw it, and he was taller than me, so I didn't want to take him on. So yeah, Australia's got some it's got some wildlife, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean you see some of the, speaking of the kangaroos, you see some of those things, and they're shredded more than what Arnie was in his A days. So like you just see some
and they're not shy.
Like, no, but it's funny as well. Like when you just see these like pictures as well with like the big reds of them just lying down, and they're just like full on like flexing, and you just see their arms are just out. Like I think, man, they're definitely like the bodybuilders of the animal world. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think as well, I guess especially for the Americans, I think you just have to make sure that you have a sign there as well that just says "Beware of the drop bear" as well. I think that's a good one to have.
Oh, they'll rip your head off, those drop bears.
Oh yeah. But well, one of the last ones. Unfortunately, I don't know his name. This guy I came across on Twitter, and he goes by the name of the Whisky Ninja. And
Whisky Ninja, I know Whisky Ninja.
Oh, well, there you go. So I guess you'll know who he is. He was wanting to know how many indie bottlings or how many indie barrels have you got right now that are ready to go?
Ready to go right now.
Or ones that you're
So, hang on, let me just see if I can find it. Hold on. Now, let's see if we can get this angle right. Oh, this is hard. I'm trying to get it right. I can't get it close. So if we go like that, and I bring. Oh, there we go.
There we
Okay,
go.
you see that one?
Yep.
So that's Blue Ring 1. Blue Ring 1 is a release. It's a future release. I'll show you the barrel.
Just so Antonio knows, that's where the redbacks are hiding.
Yep, that's number 17. So that is that's Riverborn Spirit, unpeated. So it's the same as Grumpy Old Man, but it's not peated. So that's slated for release this year. I've then got possibly still working on this one. So that one.
Yep.
That is Craftworks Distilled Spirit Capety. So that's barrel number 1, Craftworks Distillery Single Malt Whisky.
Yep.
That's potentially this year. We'll see how we go. And what else we got? I'll just do that's the stock currently. Can you see that?
Yep.
That's sort of what's on the shelf right now.
Okay.
Plus over there as well, and a few others tucked away.
Yeah. I guess you kind of already gave a rough answer as well, but another one of his questions was, I don't know if you're able to tell us at all. Do you have a rough window of when you'll be able to release your own single malt?
Yeah, I do. So this year the focus is on independent bottling for sure.
Yep.
And I'm going to do a single release this year of Craftworks Distilled Spirit. I'm not too sure, is it going to be barrel 1? It may be barrel 2, maybe barrel 3, 4, 5, not too sure. I mean, if you look at this one here, let's see if we can do it. Can you see that?
Yep.
Barrel 5. No, I don't know if you can see that. Hang on.
Yep. 3, 5, yep.
Right. Yeah, so that may be one, which is a PX sherry cask, and that's developing really nicely. But yeah, I'll definitely be releasing something this year under Craftworks distilled single malt whiskey, 100% distilled Caperty. But it won't be a lot. Definitely won't be a lot this year. This year is independent bottling. Next year, probably it'll be 70-30 split independent bottling and my spirit. And then beyond that, we'll see where we go.
Yeah. Right. And I'll say now we've come to the very last one, and I think I've saved the most important one for last. Your cap has become very popular amongst the Craftworks fan base. When can we start to see Crafty caps in store?
These caps, I'll show you the original. See that there?
Yep.
That is the original one, which has fallen to pieces, but I've kept it. So
looks like it's
these
shot with a shotgun.
Yeah, these are French caps. They come from Brittany, and I've worn them for years and years and years. And someone I know in the industry, a guy called Nick, Whisky Nick, he said to me years ago, mate, you seem to wear those hats a lot. And I went, yeah. He goes, you should wear them all the time when you do anything whiskey-wise. And so I do. It's my favorite hats, but I wear them out like, this is incredible how quickly they wear out. So I've got to source some more. I've actually tried in the past to get them because I thought, that'd be pretty cool to release as Craftworks hats, but it's so hard to find. I only find individual ones. If I can find someone that can produce a hat the same format as this, absolutely, I'd be putting it on the website as a Crafty hat.
I'm sure they'll be snapped up very quickly. That's for sure.
Bit like yours. I don't know what is that hat.
Also, this one I guess is more of it's a family exclusive, I suppose. My dad's cousin, he got the idea from it by seeing like little baby hats. So he asked his mum, so my dad's aunt, if she could just make him a square shaped beanie. And that's what we've got. So there's a few of us in the family that go around sporting these, and I can say at the moment it's no one else can have them at the moment. They're family exclusive.
It'll be on your website in the future. It's your thing now.
It gives people a laugh. I like it. You've got a lot. It's funny. You've got a lot of people that be, man, that's really cool. I like it, and others that are like, what the hell is that shit on your head? I had one time I had gone out to a concert at the Enmore Theatre with my cousin, and afterwards we went out to one of the local pubs there in Newtown, and there was this drunk old lady that just came up to me and she's like, why are you wearing a tea cozy on your head? It keeps my head warm. She goes, all right, have a good night. So we've got to have our fun.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, mate, I think, wow, we've actually, man, time goes by quickly.
For an hour and a half, mate.
We've come to almost an hour and a half now, and that I've actually come to, I guess, the end of the questions that I've intended to ask you. So I think we'll leave it at that, mate. Thank you so much for making the time to come and join me. For, I guess, the people who will be watching this, I mean, at the moment, I've been running your website across the screen every now and then, but where on the internet and other places can people look you up?
Okay, so www.craftworker.com.au.
Yep.
That is the website. The Facebook page is the Craftworks Whisky Company. That's the business page.
Yep.
If you look that up, you'll see information about it.
And that's something that you've changed recently as well.
I have, yeah. I used to run a private group called the Craftworks Distillery Inner Circle.
Yep.
But when it got to 1,200 people, it became quite difficult to manage because people
Yeah.
wanted to share information and they couldn't on a private page. So I thought, well, I probably got to the point now where I should just do it on the business page. So if someone likes or follows the business page, they'll get regular updates of what's going on in Craftworks. We tell our story, warts and all, what's going on. As far as outlets, you've got the old barrel house.
I was going to say, mate, at the moment, I hate to cut you off, but unfortunately, due to YouTube's regulations, I'm not actually allowed to, as much as I would like to, I'm not actually allowed to put out like where you can buy.
Okay. Sorry, didn't realize.
Sorry. I thought I better cut you off there because unfortunately, I guess I run the risk of having the channel shut down and all that kind of thing. But if I could, I would be plastering everywhere where you can get the products from. But unfortunately, YouTube is a bit.
Let's just say, great independent bottle shops are great supporters.
Yep.
And some great online supporters as well.
Fantastic. Yep.
All good.
Right. Well, I guess now that the politics are out of the way. Thank you again for coming on and joining me on this chat. I hope that I haven't kept you from doing more important things.
Only clean.
Again, mate, again, and a massive thank you as well for the samples that you've been sending out to me. I really cannot explain or express how much I appreciate the fact that you're putting your faith in me to be able to to review these products, and I guess just the general support that you've given me as well. But yeah, thank you very much for all of that.
No, that's fine, Andrew. Mate, it's people like you, who get out there and spread the word and tell the story. We need your backing and you need our backing, and we're all helping each other in this. So, mate, you're more than welcome, and thank you. And I sure hope you cut this into segments, because if I was someone and I had to watch an hour and a half of me rabbiting on, I don't think I would.
Mate, you'd be surprised. There are channels that have done. I've seen them. They've done live streams for say 4 to 6 hours, and people still watch them from beginning to end. So look, an hour and a half, even for a live stream, and that's pretty much an average view. Most people will stick around for that, or then they will cut back into segments when they have the time to. So I'll keep it like this. There hasn't really been any reason for why I need to chop it up and whatnot. So it's had a good flow to it. I think everything has gone well, and we'll keep it at that. But
all right, good stuff.
But I guess from my end, I guess to everybody watching this, if you're a returning subscriber, then thank you again for joining me. If you are new to the channel, then make sure you hit the bell notification and the subscribe button to stay up to date with all future content. All of you, make sure you go and check out this fine gentleman here. Just spread the word about Craftworks. The more, the merrier. And guys, as always, the usual toast. I'll see you all again next time. Get this.
Cheers all, and support Australian distillers.
Thank you.